meeting at a restaurant here in Concord. And I remember saying at the time, it really doesn't matter how bad we got screwed. If we want to change things, we've got to put on a suit and tie and become like the people that don't like us. In order to affect change, we can't allow ourselves to be portrayed as victims and losers. We have to make sure that people respect what we've done for our country, and in that way we can help those who need it the most. That's a philosophy that caught on in the veterans movement. I certainly didn't initiate it, but it was a successful one, and it's one that I've carried with me over the years. I've always tried to be very careful to be apolitical, not to be offensive to anybody, whether they're conservative or liberal, but to work with one purpose in mind, and that's to help my fellow veterans. I felt lucky compared to a lot of other guys. One of the wounds I received was a through-and-through gunshot wound in my right wrist, and it had severed an artery. When they brought me into the first evacuation hospital, there were so many wounded. There were some up on tables being worked on, and the rest of us were leaned up against a wall. Because of the severed artery, I had a pool of blood around me about 3 feet in diameter, and a doctor was coming down the line doing triage. Get him ready for surgery, get him out of here, get blood for him, whatever it needed to be. For some reason, despite my wounds, the doctor decided that I was going to be one of the ones that lived, and I didn't get put in a back room to die. You wonder about those things for the rest of your life. When the movie Saving Private Ryan came out, a lot of veterans that hadn't talked about World War II in 50 years started coming out of the woodwork and talking about it. Because I'm a combat veteran, a number of people, non-military people, came up to me and wanted to know what I thought of the movie. And my response was that the scene on the beach was very realistic. Hollywood has the ability to do that now, and it must have been pretty disturbing for some of the people that were there. But it was so different from what I experienced in Vietnam that I saw it as a pretty influential Hollywood portrayal, as opposed to something that I personally related to. But at the very end of the movie, Private Ryan is an old man, and he's in Arlington National Cemetery with his wife, and he's looking at the graves of the men who died trying to save him. And he said to his wife, have I earned it? I've wondered for 30 years, given all the people that died, if I truly earned the gift.
I think that you have, if I may express my opinion.
Oh, thank you. I said to a friend recently, and I know there are a lot of us out there like that, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of all of the people that died, all of the kids that died. And when you get to be my age, you understand what a baby-faced kid I was at 18 years old, doing the things I was doing. That's difficult enough. But when I realized how people felt about the war and how people felt about us, one of the ways I was determined to have earned having survived was by doing everything I could to change that. When the Iranian hostages were released in January of 1980, after 440 days in captivity, a news commentator said, "This generation finally has heroes." And I got so angry I broke my TV set over it, because I remembered some of the most heroic people I'd ever seen in my life, or would ever hope to see again, that were 18-year-old kids from farm towns like Chester, New Hampshire, or inner cities like Chicago. And one of the tragedies of the Vietnam War is not only the 58,000 who died, the 300,000 that were wounded, but all of the others who served honorably and came home to a nation that tried to disgrace them. Vietnam Veterans of America has a motto that says, "Never will one generation of veterans turn their back on another." We felt that was done to us, and we promised ourselves when we started that organization that we would never, ever do it to another generation of veterans. I think we've been pretty successful over the years in making the American people realize that you need to separate the war from the warrior. I think sometimes we may have been too successful because it's made it too easy to go to war. The issues have become supporting the troops, not stopping to think about, is the war necessary? Frankly, I consider myself extremely patriotic, but I raised my sons to understand that it's not worth leaving a leg in Bosnia to help people who are killing each other over religious reasons that have been doing it for 1,000 years and will do it for 1,000 more. But if the country should be invaded on Cape Cod, I would expect them to stand up and do the right thing. That's a far cry from the kind of foreign policy that we have now. And I was talking to a veteran yesterday and said, I think that we at least felt that our sacrifice wasn't in vain because we taught the country not to get in a war that they couldn't win, that was none of our business. And I've read United States congressmen's news articles talking about, we all know Iraq is going to be like Vietnam. Well, if we know it's going to be like Vietnam, what the hell are we doing there? We lost that war. You can't win a guerrilla war. You can't make religious fanatics stop killing in the name of their respective gods. It doesn't work that way. We had sappers in Vietnam. They tied satchel charges around their waist. Before they did it, they took their uniforms off so they wouldn't waste the uniform. They did it in a pair of underpants and rubber sandals. And they would charge across a perimeter and throw themselves into a position or on a tank or whatever and pull a dead cord. I remember one morning there were some dead sappers inside our position, and I said to a sergeant, "That's a 16-year-old kid. How did somebody talk him into doing that?" And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Ducey, how old are you?" "Well, I'm 18, and I didn't consider myself a kid anymore. From the perspective I have now, I understand that it's kids on both sides with the idealism and the energy to do what people talk them into doing, that get used up, that become the cannon fodder. And it's the people who are older that have a responsibility not to throw those kids away. I support the troops, but I don't support the war in Iraq. I love my country, but I am distrustful of my government. And I think in any democracy, that's a real healthy thing to be. We didn't get the country that we have because we went along and kept our mouths shut. We have the country that we have because individuals put their life, liberty, and fortunes at stake for what they believed in. People don't do that anymore. And that's really scary because I don't think we have the democracy now that I grew up with. And I worry about it. I worry about what I'll leave my children. And I'm not sure it'll be good.
But you still have hope, right?
You have to. You have to. You know, that's an issue that I had to come to terms with in the 70s. I can stay angry and bitter for the rest of my life. And I've probably got as good a reason as anybody has to feel that way. But what would I be doing to myself? And again, at that point it occurred to me, you can't take what you've got and throw it away. You've got to do something. And it's why I've done veterans work for all these years. That and because some of the most fantastic people I ever met, I met in Vietnam.
Did you keep in touch with people that you met there? Do you
My-
go to reunions, for instance?
No, we were so widely dispersed as a unit, being in small 2- and 4-man teams assigned to different infantry companies, that there is a